Hello and welcome to the very first episode of Fitsis, the podcast with myself, G.I.Jess. If you know me, you know that I've been in the podcast industry or in the radio industry for quite some time. But this is a podcast that's a little bit different. It is all about the Muslima in the arena. This is where we celebrate the grit and grace and game-changing power of Muslim women in sport. From the arena to everyday life, we're here to inspire you to step up, to move more, and to embrace a healthier, stronger life. And my very first guest is Kiandra Browne. Kiandra is an American basketball player and revert to Islam. And I'm really excited. I feel like we are sisters from different misters because there's so much that we have in common, which is just incredible. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited for this.
So Kiandra, I had the Twitter bio kind of version of what it would appear that you are from Instagram. So I've got that you're a basketball player. I got that you are a Muslim woman, a revert. But for the audience sake, tell us a little bit more about what it is that you do and who you are.
So my name's Kiandra. I was born and raised in Montreal, Canada, came down to the US, and now I am a online fitness coach and athlete. So I play basketball at a high level. And I just, first of all, I love what I do. I love everything about sports. It's been, one of the biggest parts of my life. I've been active playing sports since, I was able to walk. So, it's a big part of my life. And, alhamdulillah, when I accepted Islam in 2020, it wasn't something that I stopped doing, which a lot of people thought that I would, because when I started wearing hijab and everything like that, but I was able to, make it all work and continue to play basketball and continue to, be active and not use it kind of like as a crutch to stop being active or stop doing the things that I love. So that's a little bit about me, and alhamdulillah, and I hope to, work with women and inspire women to be active and to continue to be active and to take care of their health and to take care of their body as it's an amana from Allah, a trust from Allah. So that's kind of what I've set out a little bit to do.
That's beautiful. Alhamdulillah. When anybody interviews a revert to Islam, they're like, so how did you find Islam? And then it's probably quite a condensed story. And you're like, how do I give you a short paragraph to sum it up? So you've told me your story already, but for those that don't know, can you just give us the little snippet into how you found Islam?
That's how I found Islam. And as a revert too, it's hard to really bring it down to a couple sentences, but I'll try my best. So literally one day out of the blue, I was 16 and it just hit me. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was on a bus ride home from school. At the time I commuted to school and I was on the bus home from school, and it just hit me and I was like, I want to know who God is. Like it just kind of hit me like that, and I was like, I need to figure out who this God is, and I need to, figure out what that relationship really is like. And then I went on years of journey of looking into different religions, looking in to all of that, and then I ended up going to a Christian school and I learned a lot more about the religion that I was supposedly kind of brought up on. We weren't super religious, but I learned more about it. And, it wasn't what I thought it was. We'll put it there. And I think a lot of people who were born Christian and reverted, they get to a point where they realize, okay, this is not what I was told it was. I felt lied to for a very long time. And then I learned, I had high school friends that I had gone to high school with who were Muslim. They taught me a little bit more about Islam. They're like, oh, okay, well, we do this, and that. And I was like, oh, that sounds cool. I was like, oh, okay, that sounds a lot more like something that I would believe in, and something that, makes sense. And that really was a thing. And I just learned more about Islam. And that was the thing that I always came back to was, Islam just makes sense. So after I got over myself and was like, okay, you know what, now I became Muslim, people are gonna, look at me different, I'm gonna wear hijab, it's gonna be all this different. Once I got over myself, alhamdulillah, I accepted Islam my freshman year of college, 2020, during COVID. So alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. So you mentioned that, you haven't been Muslim for a very, very long time. And you mentioned that kind of coming into Islam and the hijab sounds like they kind of came around the same time. Did you wear hijab pretty much hijab straight away?
I think 9 months after I reverted. It was pretty soon after. And it was after my first Ramadan. And I was like, okay, because I committed, it was halfway through the basketball season. I was like, I can't just pull up in a hijab the next day, everyone's gonna be like, what the heck? This is so weird. And so after the season, after like Ramadan, I was like, okay, again, I had to get over myself. And it's one of those things where you live a certain way and you see yourself a certain way, and you change not only the way that you see yourself every day, like in the mirror, but also the way that everybody else around you sees you. And that can be one of the hardest things to deal with. And obviously, it also has like a revert too. Like you have to deal with, what your family might say. Now, you're not only, praying 5 times a day, waking up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, but you're also
So extreme.
crazy. Now, you're also like looking different. And so that can be a tough pill to swallow for not only yourself, but for everyone around you who's not used to this. And it can be a lot of change at once, and it's a bit overwhelming for, again, not only yourself, but for people around you as well. So, I kind of like got over
Yeah.
that, and I was like, you know what, this is important to me. Like, this is my truth, and this is what I believe in, and I'm not going to stray from that. And I think that moment was one of the most pivotal moments in my life to date. Not very, doesn't say much, I'm 22. It's one of the most pivotal times in
I
my
think that,
life.
yeah, yeah.
It's
There's going
so
to be many more to come. I think that's beautiful. Did you feel, did you feel like you were reintroducing yourself on a very public platform? And I
Yes.
ask this because so I've been in hijab twice. When I first reverted to Islam, which was 17 years ago, I wore hijab, and then I had a wobble halfway through, and then for me, I found fighting after that, and then went into hijab again a year ago. Alhamdulillah. And it has felt like a reintroduction of myself to this public audience, in my space, which is the fighting space, because they've got this kind of footage and pre-fights and, things of me in pre-Islam, and they were very uncovered. And then there's not pre-Islam, pre-hijab. And then there's this reintroduction of like almost feeling like a very new person that's walking into the space. The first time I did it, it felt like a lot. So I'm curious to know, how did it feel for you? Did you have to have a conversation with anybody first and go, I'm now Muslim, this is what I wear?
Yeah.
That's my first question. My second question is, how did it feel walking onto the court the first time and now
Oh
Kiandra
my
in
gosh.
hijab? Did you feel like everyone was
No, and
staring
like
at you?
everyone was staring at me. It's like we're like,
Who's the new
okay,
girl?
that's actually what happened. People thought that I was new, and I was like, I kind of was like okay with that too. But yeah, I mean, I just remember sending like a mass text to all of my teammates and just being like, hey, like this is what I'm gonna do. This is why I'm gonna do it. And I said like, if you have any questions, come ask me. Because I was kind of like, I don't want you guys to go and make up your own ideas as to like what I'm doing or why I'm changing the way that I'm looking. And I did have people being like, are you okay? Are you being oppressed? Like, is your dad making you wear?
Blink
They were
twice
like,
if you
is your
need.
husband making you? I was like, no. No, I definitely remember like my first time like going out onto the court, like the next game, going out on the court and feeling like everybody was like staring at me. And I feel like part of it was everyone was staring at me, but definitely it was a lot more like, I think it was like
Yeah.
50-50. 50% like was me just thinking people were staring at me, and then 50% of people are actually staring at me. But I think that people got over it pretty quickly. Like after like 2 weeks, couple weeks, they were like, oh, okay, like whatever. It was kind of, it just was, it was what it was.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, you'll probably say this to your clients a lot as well, but I have a lot of clients who have a fear about going into a gym space because they feel like everyone's staring at them. And I'm like, no, like everyone's more obsessed
Literally.
with themselves. Like no one's actually looking at you. But obviously when you do something new and it's the hijab it makes such a powerful
Oh my
statement
gosh.
without you doing much that there is going to be an initial level of staring. But then when people see that it's consistent, they move on to the next to the next thing to focus on. So I'm curious though, from a challenge perspective, was there any public backlash or people in the basketball fan space that were particularly unhappy about this new hijabi that's
Yeah,
on
so
the
I mean,
court?
the thing is though, and I say this all the time, is like you remember the negative interactions a lot more than you remember the positive ones. And yes, of course, like you're like everything that you're probably thinking right now, yes, it's probably happened. Like there's been that heckler, there's been that person say this or whatever in the but I want to
Same.
like take a second to acknowledge all of the, positive interactions that I've had.
Yeah.
those are often forgotten because of the few bad apples. Like I remember this one time I was in an international competition with Team Quebec in Ecuador, and I speak very, very conversational Spanish, not like the most in-depth. And I remember, going up for the jump ball like before the game, and the ref comes to me and he says in his very broken English, trying his best to talk to me, he says you're so beautiful. And then I go like, oh, like, like gracias, like this and that, like thank you. And then he goes to the other ref who spoke better English, and he told him to say, and the other ref told me, he's like, he wanted us to tell you that he doesn't know what you're wearing. He doesn't know you. And I'm tearing up just like thinking about this because it was such like a beautiful moment. He was like, he doesn't know, he wants to say he doesn't know what you're wearing. He said he doesn't know who you are, but he says that you're one of the most beautiful women that he's ever seen in his life. And I was Yes,
You
like
got like
goosebumps. And
goosey.
I'm like, subhanAllah, like, doesn't that go against everything that we've been taught? That you need to undress,
Yeah.
you need to have your makeup looking a certain way, you need to have your body looking a certain way for people to think that, that you're beautiful, that you're attractive, and all of this stuff. But the hijab in and of itself brings a different kind of beauty that people can't even put a finger on. Like they can't even articulate what that beauty is, but they just look at you and they're like, wow, like that's beautiful. Like I've never seen this before, but it's beautiful. So of course, like I've had bad interactions, but I can tell you I've had 3 times as much positive ones like that, where people have said like very, very like moving things to me, and like that interaction, like I'm gonna remember for the rest of my life. But also you'll remember the negative ones
Yeah.
as well, which suck, but there's gonna be so many more, positive ones.
I love that, and I love that about you because you seem to always find a way to spin an answer to be super positive, and I love that because it's something that I've noticed as a trend with you, and it just feels like that positivity just like oozes out of you quite naturally. So I thank you for that answer. It's really beautiful, and you made me realize the same thing now as you're speaking. I'm going, I tend to hold on to some of the
Yeah.
troll comments more, but actually there are
Oh my
so many
gosh.
more positive ones that come through. So thank you for putting that into
No, yeah,
perspective
of
for me. I
course.
appreciate it. So tell me a little bit about before I want to move on to kind of how you balance your faith in your career in just a second, but tell me a little bit more about those early pre-Islam maybe challenges or things that you faced at, what got you into basketball and into playing sport? And do you find that being a woman in sport, before
Right.
being a Muslim woman in sport, what are some of the challenges that you faced as just a woman in the sporting space? And what I would say is a pretty
Yeah.
male dominated space
Yeah,
generally.
so what got me into sports originally, like my mom played basketball, my dad played football at a high level. Like it was like a family affair. Like it was a thing where this is just what we do in our family. My grandmother played basketball. Like she played, for anyone who's listening who knows basketball, like she played before it was
Amazing.
5 offense, 5 defense. She played when it was 2-1-2. So 2 people always stayed on offense, 2 people always stayed on defense, and then one person was able to go up and down. And they did that for the women because they didn't believe that women had the cardiovascular strength to go up and down the court like the men did. So it
SubhanAllah.
runs in the family. My uncle played rugby, like my cousins played about every other sport, like hockey, ringette, soccer. Like it just was one of those things where it's super, super normal for me. I grew up playing ringette, which is a ice sport, very similar to hockey, but pretty much I don't think I've ever seen a man play ringette. It's a women's sport. And I grew up playing ringette, and then I grew up playing soccer a little bit. And then after that, I wanted to, my ultimate dream, I loved ringette. Ringette was my first love. And I would still be playing ringette if it was an Olympic sport. And it's not an Olympic sport.
Got you.
I was on the quest to find a different sport that I love because my goal was to represent my country. Like my goal was always to go and represent like Team Canada on a national stage, or an international stage rather. And so my mom, who had played basketball her whole life, trying so hard to get me to love basketball, she was like, Keandra, like, why don't you give basketball a shot? Like, why don't, just go to tryouts just for fun. Like, you don't have to play, just for fun. And I was like, at this point, I think I was like 12 or 13, and I was behind, like in like my knowledge of the sport compared to like everybody else. And I was like, Mom, like I can't, I remember telling her like, Mom, I can't dribble the ball between my legs. Like I'm not going to be good at basketball. And she was like, she's like, don't worry about that. And she took me to a park and we worked for hours trying to, trying
I love
to
that.
learn how to do layups, she taught me how to like shoot the ball, like she tried to teach me like some ball handling, stuff like that. So I then went in, and now it was funny because I'm like, I know nothing about basketball. Like I don't know the rules. I didn't know the rules. I just knew that you couldn't walk with the ball, you had to dribble, and you had to put the ball into the orange hoop. Like that was essentially like what I knew of basketball.
Pretty much what I know.
But I was so surprised that by learning those fundamentals with my mom, the very fundamentals of the sport, I pretty much blended in with everybody else. Like you couldn't tell that I hadn't played, and everybody else had played since they were maybe like 5 or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay, like I can do this. So then I was like, I did and obviously I was like 5'10" in 6th grade. Like I was very, very tall, and I was taller than everybody else. So like obviously like that caught the attention of the coaches. They're like, oh wow, she's really tall. Like, this is good, yada yada. And I did
Yeah.
well in the tryouts. And I remember coming home and I was like, Mom, like that was so much fun. And then our private sessions continued, and I was able to, alhamdulillah, like get better at basketball and all of this stuff, and ended up falling in love with the sport. And and here I am today. Like fast forward, and here I am today. But inshallah, that's still one of my goals,
Yeah.
is to go to the Olympics, inshallah. But that's kind of how,
Amen.
I kind of found basketball. But in the second part of your question with like how it is in regards to being a woman in basketball, the thing is the capabilities, and I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. Like the capabilities, the physical capabilities of men and women are different. It just is what it is. You probably get it too. Like men can punch harder. Men can maybe move a bit quicker. Like
Yeah.
it just is. It's genetics, and it is what it is. So the women's game in terms of basketball is a lot different than the men's game. And the men's game at the highest level, the NBA level, is a lot, and a lot of critics will say like, it's a lot of one-on-one. It's a lot of, now it's beginning to be a lot of threes with the Steph Curry effect. I like to call it the Steph Curry effect. Everyone is just shooting threes. You have guys who are 7'2" shooting threes, and then obviously, and then
Wow.
dunking the ball. So it's become kind of two-dimensional. It's either dunks, layups at the rim, or three-pointers. And women, obviously, we can't dunk the ball the same way that men do. Now, are there women that can dunk the ball? Absolutely, and they're phenomenal. Not something I'll be able to do. I'm not athletic like that. But, because of that factor, women's basketball it's just not the same as men's. And it gets kind of put down in a sense.
Yeah.
But the thing is when it comes to execution, when it comes to playing together as a team, when it comes to strategy, I find that women's basketball has a bit of a higher knock than the men. Because it's not flashy. We're not, doing alley-oop dunks or anything like that. Obviously, like women's basketball gets not taken as seriously. But in recent years, we have made huge strides in the WNBA and in international competition and stuff like that, which is amazing. But, it is always, oh, you're good for a woman, or you're good for a girl, and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So, I mean, it is what it is. Is basically what I'm trying to say. Is like, it is what it is. And at the end of the day, like, women's basketball, we still do have a good level of respect of the game, and we do play basketball to a high level, and our execution and our craftiness and our IQ is often very high. So a lot of
Mm.
people who understand the game of, put it this way, people who understand the game of basketball will really appreciate the women's game. People who don't know a lot about basketball and just want to watch basketball for something flashy will not understand the beauty of the women's game, because we don't dunk the ball. But if
Yeah.
we're able to dunk the ball, it's pretty much the same. If not, I would say a knock above, just for the IQ and the craftiness of it. But yeah, that's
I love that because you've mentioned it twice around the IQ and the maybe more technical elements that women bring to a sport. And I feel the same when it comes to women in fighting, is that we do move differently and our approach is different to men. And it's interesting that you mentioned, I know very little about basketball, but it's interesting that you mentioned that there are slightly different. I think you said that there's slightly different rules, or was that with the other sport you mentioned, which I've
So
never
no, I
heard
was talking about
before?
rigging it before, but there's no the rules are the same. The rules are the same. The
Okay.
format of the game sometimes is different. So like for the men, they play two halves. We play four quarters. At the college level, it
Yeah.
depends.
So that's what's so interesting, is because in fighting, in boxing and Muay Thai specifically, the women's rounds are 2 minutes, whereas men's rounds are 3 minutes. But in MMA, they've made it that women and men all have 5-minute rounds at professional level. But I think the fact that, as one thing that Islam has taught me, is that men and women are different. Where there's a lot of your kind of woke community right now that wants to kind of speak about why we're all kind of the same. And Islamically, we just believe that we are different. We created for slightly different
And
purposes. We
there's
have different
nothing wrong
roles,
with that.
and you
There's
can't
nothing
deny that.
wrong with that. That's the issue, is
Exactly.
that we think that difference is bad, but
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with being different. And like that's I'm sorry to cut you off, but like that's
Yeah.
one of the beauties of it. That's one of the beauties
No.
of it, is that we're different and we bring something different to the table. Like sure, we're not going to bring dunking, but we bring a higher level of IQ and a higher level of being able to play together than the men do. Like it's different, and like that's okay that it's different. So yeah, I just wanted to add that in there.
I love that. Yeah, yeah, no, it is okay that it's different, and I think we need to celebrate our differences and enjoy them a little bit more. But there's a lot of this comparison, that women coming into the sporting space, they're held to a men's level instead of to another woman's level. Do you know what I mean? Like team against team. And there's a reason why women and men aren't playing in a mixed environment. Women are competing against women and men are competing against men, because we bring something different. And I found in the fighting space, there's a different approach from an intellectual perspective. We're often seen as a little bit more technical and etc. So I love that we can share that. So you've mentioned kind of how you got into basketball there, and some of the challenges maybe that are around women in basketball. In terms of moving into, should I say, in terms of becoming Muslim and being in that high level basketball space, did you find any initial challenges in those early days, and how did you
Yeah,
overcome?
so in terms of being Muslim, it's just, when you wear hijab, you have a different routine than everybody else. Like I need different things. Like I need to find hijabs, I need to find long sleeves, I need to find joggers, I need to find, you know what I mean? So there is like that component as well. And then there's also, the faith component as well. Is like I tell my coaches, I'm like, I have salah at 2. Practice runs from 1 to 5. I have salah at 2. Like that's just how it's gonna be. And not every coach likes that, but alhamdulillah, the coaches I have now are amazing with it. And they're like, yeah, Kiandra, like whatever you need, like just take your 5 minutes to go to the locker room, like you're fine. But it is kind of the world isn't the Western world, at least, is not made for Muslims. And I say that with we have there's Christmas holidays, but we don't get time off at Eid. Like we are expected to work, say for example, a 9 to 5. Like there's no break in there for salah. Like you have your dhuhr, you have your asr, depending on the time of the day. You might even have maghrib during that time too. And there's no prayer breaks. There's no musallas anywhere. There's nothing like that. So like essentially what you're asking is like, how do I navigate a world that wasn't created for us? And the thing is you have to go into that world and make it your own. So you need to go and first identify your priorities. Like what are your priorities? Like is your priority your salah? Is it your hijab? Like is it like what is it? And then find a way to make it your own, right? So my salah, like I tell my coaches like, hey, like practice 1 to 4, 1 to 5, like I have salah too. Like it just is what it is. It's 5 minutes and I'll be back during a water break, during whatever it is, like I'll be back. It's just gonna take me, like 5 minutes. In a world like hijab, like this year I got approved, I got religious waivers to wear joggers. I didn't want to wear leggings underneath my shorts. I got a religious waiver for that. Like there's a process to that. I had to go through the process to do that. Like there's certain things where you can kind of just accept it as it is and feel like you need to compromise, or you can go out and advocate for yourself and make yourself feel a bit uncomfortable, but with the purest intention that you have, and it's to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like that is my intention in pretty much everything that I do. And inshallah, like I hope that Allah will reward me for that, for striving in that and struggling through that, to be able to, wear my hijab correctly, make sure that my salah is on time, make sure that, there's all these things, like if we have whatever guys in the practice, I'm like, look, you're not touching me unless you have a pad on. So they'll use pads to defend me, like I'm not touching you. You know what I mean? Like there's certain things that you can do, that you can advocate. You have to kind of like think outside the box that they put you in, because they're putting you in a box. You have to think outside the box.
Yeah.
You have to find a way to break the box and to go outside of it. So that's kind of like what it's like.
Yeah. And those conversations can be scary. I mean, I know, especially, mentioning making that decision to not have like non-mahram men touch you. In a Western world, that is seen as extremely rude. A lot of women, a lot of Muslim women in this space will, choose to not be uncomfortable and, risk upsetting somebody, to go ahead with it. That, for me, that was the
Those are
those are the
scary.
scariest conversations to have, because people take it for, and then it's somehow it will make a guy feel that you think you're better than him
Yeah.
somehow. You know what I mean? So those can be very
And
difficult
it could be an
conversations to have.
ego. It
Okay,
could
so
be an
well
ego
done
hit
on
for some men too. And
pushing through.
it comes down to, and like the thing is like, yeah, like that is like a big thing. Like in our in the culture, handshakes, hugs. Like I can't tell you the amount of men that have come up to me trying to hug me. I'm like, what are you doing? But
Yeah, yeah.
our dean is
I had Muslim men when I
case.
wore the hijab. Muslim men come up to me to come and congratulate me that I'm now wearing hijab. Like literally putting their hand. I'm like, what? Like I would expect to have to navigate this from a non-Muslim man, but
No,
like,
and you
really, dude?
see, I wasn't gonna say that, but that has happened way too many times. Like, we need to check ourselves first, because we have things like that happening. Like, I have Muslim men trying to shake my hand. I'm like, what do you not see this? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah,
But no, like, subhanAllah, it is one of those things where in our culture it's just really weird. But the thing is, our deen is essentially like a trailblazer. Our dean, I wouldn't necessarily a trailblazer, but our dean is ahead of everybody by so much. Like you see in workplaces now, like they're discouraging one man and one woman to be alone in an office. You have to have the door open. Our dean tells you to do that. They're discouraging unnecessary touching. Our dean already does that. Like, you know what I mean? Like I should say the world is behind. Our dean is a
yeah,
We've
yeah. The
already been
blueprint
there.
is
Like
there. Yeah,
the blueprint is there, but everybody else is, behind. And it's just one of those. It's just one of those things that I think is like one of the most beautiful things. And like, going back to like, not touching like non-mahram men, for example. There's ways of also going about it, and I think that in our day and age, like there's so many things. Like I don't go and say, so just so you know, like Islamically, like like there's the Sharia, like it says that, like I'm not going and saying. I just plainly say, like, hey, I'm not comfortable touching, like it's a me thing. I say I'm not
yeah,
comfortable
yeah,
with it. It's a me thing. It has nothing to do with you. I said, but I would really just appreciate it if, like, maybe if you want to say, you could go like this to me, like whatever it is. I'm just saying, look, it's a me thing. Like I put it on me so that they don't feel bad about it. I'm just like, look, it's a me thing. Like, it's an ick that I have. Like whatever you want to say. And I'm like, it's an ick that I have. I just don't
yeah,
like it, and I'm sorry. And like that's a boundary. And even in our day and age, like people are, promoting, setting boundaries and all this stuff. You know what I mean?
boundaries.
It's like
That's
so
so
new
new age.
age. So I'm, I'm in with the crowd, doing that. But I'm just saying, and again, like I just put it on me. I'm like, it's me. It's my ick. I don't like it. And like, you're so great for respecting that. Like just complimenting them in that way. Like you're so great for doing that for me, and like I really appreciate that. So then now you leave that conversation and
Yeah,
they feel good
I
about
love that.
themselves. They feel good about themselves, and you go and you're happy with the boundary that you've set. Now,
Yeah,
some guys, they still forget, and
yes,
they'll come put their hand around me in the huddle or whatever, and I'll just be like, "Ooh, I'm just gonna go around that." But, it just
yeah,
is what it is. And it's great. And I think, having that intention and having that, want to do things the right way, alhamdulillah, and inshallah, Allah will reward you and everyone for that.
yeah. I love that you are, really making a concerted effort to put those boundaries out there. They're so important. And it can be difficult. I think a lot of Muslims in the non-sporting space would maybe, and maybe you've encountered this, would maybe have said to you, you know, maybe basketball, it's so mixed, even though you're playing on a women's team, like maybe this isn't where you should be, you know, now that you've become a Muslim. Have you had any of that? And has that been a challenge to navigate at all?
Are you talking about like from Muslims?
Yeah, so I think the Muslim community as a global thing are not necessarily as clued up on like women in like not as on board with women in sports. So initially coming into a space where, okay, is it going to be mixed? Are there going to be men? Are they potentially going to be touching you? You know, is there going to be a potential issue with your hijab? Like all of those things, are you going to be in a um on you know front and center with a lot of attention on you? All of that stuff can be kind of sent to us as women in the sporting space as reasons why we shouldn't be competing anymore. And certainly you and I both working in the fitness space where we're trying to encourage Muslim women to be active. That's often feedback that they give me, is that, you know, we didn't grow up playing sport, we didn't grow up being active, our husband or our father doesn't want us to be in the space, something like that. Have you encountered any of those challenges coming into Islam as a profession, as an athlete, and how
To
did you
be
navigate
honest,
that?
I've had a pretty good response from Muslims, and like a very encouraging response as well. Of course, like I'm obviously like I wouldn't say I'm a public figure, but like people see what I do on social media. It's like you see what I do, like you get it. And what I say is, so there's usually like three main concerns. One is the hijab, two is the non like okay, really one and two is the hijab, and the third is like non-mahram men, being around non-mahram men, right? So for the hijab, I have a sports hijab. It's tucked in. It doesn't move. It is what it is. It's not gonna, you know. And the thing is too is like, if you're worried about your hijab slipping or whatever like that, it can happen in everyday life. And it's not just gonna be because of the sport that it slips or that something gets exposed that it shouldn't be. That's happened. It's happened to me just walking around. So it pulls backwards. Like it just, you know, it happens in
Yeah.
everyday life, and it's a thing. And that's why Allah says to the believing men to lower your gaze, even if a woman's wearing a hijab, like to lower your gaze. So that's for the at least the headpiece part. For the rest of the piece, I've had religious waiver after religious waiver after religious waiver. I don't wear, you know, tight sleeves. I wear loose sleeves. I got religious waiver to wear joggers. I don't wear leggings under my shorts. I wear like a very loose fitting jogger. So in terms of like your body being exposed, like what I wear, I mean, I'm not going to compare myself to non-Muslims, but I'm just saying like what I wear compared to like the standard what usually people wear
Yeah.
is very different. My jersey is about a triple XL, you know? So it's very modest. You can't really see the shape of my body from the front, from the side. Like
Yeah.
it's very,
You've done your
exactly,
best. Yeah.
I've done like I've tied my camel. Like I have tied my camel and I've done my best.
Yeah.
There's those things. And then like I said before, like I have those boundaries in place. Like I'm not, you know, like when there's guys for whatever reason, I'm like, here, take a pad. Like I'm not, you know, posting up on you. I'm not playing one-on-one with you. Like it's just not going to happen. And there's obviously like it's just not my coaching staff right now is I have a male head coach. I have male assistant coaches, but there's also female assistant coaches as well. You know, and already in the workplace, I'm just thinking of all the scenarios. Like already in the workplace, you know, we're not
Yeah.
allowed to be by yourself one-on-one. Like if I have to meet with my head coach, like I'm never by myself with him in his office. Like there's a female assistant head coach that's there, or I don't think it's her, but like, or he always keeps the door open anyways. Like you always keep the door open. So you're never really like compromised in that space. And of course, like the level of basketball that I'm playing, like the sports that I'm playing, it's a higher level than what like your average Muslima would do. And for your average Muslima, like there are women's leagues. Like if you want to play basketball, like there's women's recreational leagues. You're never gonna see a man there. And you know,
Yeah.
there's stuff like that. There's women only spaces. If you're someone who's like, you know, my dad didn't want me to do sports growing up because of non-mahram men being around. My husband doesn't want me to do things because of non-mahram men. If that like is the biggest issue for you, there are solutions is what I'm trying to say. Like there are solutions if that's the situation that you're in.
Yeah.
There are all women gyms. There are workouts that you can do at home. You know, there are videos that you can watch, and I'll say watch them muted because most of them have like, you know, like music in the background or whatever it is. But, you know, there's a
Yeah.
solution. What I'm trying to say is there's a solution for every single thing. And I don't want any of those like barriers. I don't want there to be any barriers to your success in the fitness world, there's always going to be a solution. And that's kind of like what I do with my clients too. My clients are like, I don't want to go to a gym. I don't want to go to a mixed gym, or, there's no female only gyms. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's get like some 10, 20-pound dumbbells from Walmart and let's go and do some at home workouts. Like there's always a solution. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get across, is that I don't want you to, just because of there's one barrier or there's one thing that's like an inconvenience, to just give up completely.
To give up
There's
completely.
always going to be something. And again, some people say, gym workouts are better than at-home workouts. Whatever you want. I'm from the perspective that something is better than nothing. Something is better than nothing.
100%.
And doing, doing at least something every single day, or at least a 10-minute walk, is better than not walking at all. Like whatever it is, to just be active and to be movement. And again, like I feel like you and I are in a bit more of like an extreme case. We're not necessarily the average Muslima who wants to be healthy. We've kind of gone a bit crazy, but
Yeah.
even in our
Yeah,
spaces,
yeah.
we're able to find things. We're able to find things that, we don't feel like we need to compromise our deen for, so all I'm trying to say.
And it takes a little bit of courage sometimes to advocate, like you said, but approaching it. What I love about what you're saying is that you've approached everything on your side with a solution focused mentality, and that's something that you're encouraging for your clients to do as well. So I know from following your journey for a little while now is that you speak a lot about kind of going through the ups and downs of being an athlete. You've been injured, you've gained weight, and then you've had to kind of work through, navigate those. Have you found that there was a shift in navigating that post-Islam? Like, do you feel like you approach problems and problem solving, or should I say setbacks and challenges, in a different way now than you did, pre-2020?
All of my setbacks have been post-Islam, and I'm so happy about that for so many reasons. One, because now I actually have Allah. Because, as a revert, like, comparing, like, I'm like, I don't know how I survived without the deen. Like, I don't know how I did it. Like, I don't know how I survived, quite frankly. And I remember, like, the day that I took my shahada in a mosque that shouldn't have been open during 2020, that was supposed to be closed for COVID. When I went in, he said, okay, well, he said, the brother who gave me my shahada, he said to me, he said two things. He said, respect your parents even more. This was the first thing he said to me. He said, respect your parents even more. In Islam, it's super, super important. And even if they aren't okay with your decision, now is the time to have an even higher level of respect for them and to treat them even better than you did previously. And I was like, okay. And the second thing is, you are going to face so many trials. Like, this is when all the trials are going to begin. And I would kind of look at him and I was like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I was like 17, 18 at the time. Like, I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. But now, like, alhamdulillah, like, I see all of this and I'm like, you know what? Yes, like, I've had to deal with 2 major hip surgeries. I've had, torn tendons. I've had torn ligaments. I've had herniated discs. I've had pretty much every, injury known. Like, I've gone through so much. I've gained weight, I've lost weight, I've been on steroids, I've been on, all of this stuff for all of the injuries that I've had to deal with. I've had 6 shots into my hips. Like, I've had pretty much everything done. And the thing is that now you approach that as a Muslim, it's a game changer. It's an absolute game changer, because you have the deen, you have dua, you have the Quran, you have all of these tools to help you get through those. And had I had to go through that before, I don't know if I would have came out on top in the same way that I have now.
I love that. That is beautiful. One thing that stood out for me is around your advice that you were given around treating your parents better. And I think when we spoke previously, you had said that your parents were very accepting about the shift for you, which is unfortunately a rarer kind of response, especially when somebody is as young as you were when you embraced Islam. And I imagine, even though you're Canadian, the general kind of, the perception from my side of the world is that the general American space is quite anti-Islam. And I think there's a kind of a assumption that kind of filters into, the Canadian space as well. But it seems like you went through a pretty easy transition with your parents. But definitely what I found most reverts say, and myself is, with me, it's the same. My parents weren't very accepting, but what changed their hearts over time was seeing how I changed towards them. And that was like, oh, well, Islam is telling you to do this. Islam is telling you to be better to your parents. So I was able to mend a relationship or relationships just through trying to be a better Muslim, doing it for the sake of Allah, and it brought them closer to accepting and understanding the shifts that I made. Anything from your side that you kind of want to elaborate on that
Yeah,
on
no,
that
of course.
topic?
So for the most part, like it was very like my parents were pretty accepting of it. Like my mom was pretty accepting of it. She was a mom. She was a mom. Like, like you always
Okay.
have those worries for your kid, like, oh, you're gonna wear the hijab, like people are gonna treat you differently now. Like you aren't gonna get a job because of that. Like you're gonna be mistreated. It's dangerous for you. Stuff like that. Like there was nothing of like I don't want you to wear that because it's bad. It was more of I don't want you to like be discriminated against. Like I don't want you to be, treated differently because you have so much to offer. And, because your mom always thinks you're like the best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah, yeah.
You have so much to offer. Like, why would you throw that all away for like a piece of cloth, essentially? And, you know, and I can understand that, from a mom's perspective. But alhamdulillah, like all in all, like I think that especially from the stories that I hear from my revert friends, like my parents took it pretty good compared to a lot of other people, like,
Alhamdulillah.
alhamdulillah. And, I think it's one of those things where I think there is like a certain level of respect as well, just because like this is something that I went out and did on my own. Like it was completely unexpected and I stand by it. Okay, for anyone who's watching who's basketball person, like there's an expression, live and die by the three. I live and die by my hijab and by my deen. Like it really is like that. And, if we're successful that way, like worldly successful, then I'm still gonna wear it. If we're not worldly successful, I'm still gonna wear it. Like there's no wavering in that. And I think that because of that, there is like a certain level of respect as well for my mom and for my parents and for my family in general. So alhamdulillah for that. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. So we are running out of time. In closing, or the last little bit of this chat, I want to kind of touch on what it is that you do outside of the basketball space in terms of the online coaching that you're doing, which essentially is about getting Muslim women moving more, whether it's reaching weight loss goals, getting stronger. There is a growing um, difficulty that I think the Ummah is facing, especially in the female space, but the brothers are struggling too. And I feel like it's a global problem, but Islam, it seems that sometimes the more modest we start dressing, the less we start looking after our body because we just don't look at it and then we forget that there's a body under there that needs to be nourished and walk, etc. And we get busy making babies and whatever it is, but it seems like there are a lot of Muslim women that are just not very physically active and they're struggling. So tell me a little bit more about what it is that you're doing from an online fitness coaching perspective, and then kind of how are you, some inspiration in terms of how to get these Muslim women
Yeah, no.
moving
So
more.
I essentially help Muslim women lose weight, lose their belly fat, and improve their iman at the same time. So I believe the two are very, very intertwined, fitness and deen. And there's a huge, like, whether you like it or not, like a huge fitness component to our deen. Like you know, if your stomach gets in the way of you making ruku, if it gets in the way of like making sujud, or you have this like knee pain and this back pain due to your kind of like inactivity and like lack of fitness, like that impacts your deen. Like how are you like, and I don't want to be harsh, but like how are you gonna make hajj? How are you gonna make umrah? And like the only thing that's going to be on your mind is, oh my gosh, this hurts so much. Like my knees are hurting, my back is hurting. I'm so out of shape. Like I'm walking, and it just hurts. And like that's not what you want the focus to be during your hajj, during your umrah. Like you don't want to be thinking that. Like you want to be thinking about Allah and like worshiping Allah and just being like super grateful and in the moment. And our deen requires a certain level of physical fitness as well. Like we know that there's hadith and about the Prophet ﷺ and how his like he didn't have a protruding belly. Like everything was in line. And obviously for the women that are pregnant, it doesn't apply to you at that time. But like
Yeah.
being fit and being strong, not only like mentally but physically as well, is a huge part of the deen, and it's one of the parts that are often, I feel like, overlooked. And my I guess words of advice to like a woman who's kind of struggling with that is to look at is to one, it doesn't need to be huge. I'm not saying that they need to go and do what you and I do, because what you and I do is not average. It's not average. And just walking, just going on walks every day, or doing, and I'm huge about strength training. Doing some form of strength training 2-3 times a week at home, body weight is good enough. It's better than nothing. And
Yep.
the change in taking care of your health, taking care of not only the physical component, but also the nutritional component as well, and eating in a way that is in line with the sunnah, is in line with what the Prophet ﷺ ate and how he nourished his body when he went out to war, when he went out to all of these battles and stuff like that. Doing all of that in conjunction to itself is going to improve your marriage, improve your quality of life, your everyday life. It's going to improve your confidence. Trust me, your confidence will absolutely skyrocket. That's not just going to affect, maybe the first thing that people think is, oh, it's going to positively improve my marriage or something like that, or the way that I think about myself. Think about, like, what would a more confident you do? Like, would she go to the masjid?
Yeah.
Would she go to that halakha? Would she walk to the masjid? Would she go and make new friends at the masjid? Like, would she go, like, what would she do? And when you kind of look at it from that perspective of what other things are on the other side of the wall that is discomfort and that is all of my limiting beliefs, like, what is over there? Like, I want you to take a ladder and just peek over there and see what is on the other side.
Peek over.
I think that by looking at that and really thinking of what is it that I can actually gain, you're gonna, get down from your ladder and you're gonna start going to work at that barrier and trying to break it and trying to get to the other side. So again, like, in sum, I guess, like, my words of advice to that woman would just be to start slow. You don't need to go and throw yourself in the deep end with weights attached to your ankles. You can, play around the kiddie pool first and then maybe in the shallow end or whatever it is, but to just start somewhere. And the thing is, you're going to have instant results. Like, the first day that you go out and that you exercise or that you eat better or something like that, like, it is instantaneous. The way that you will feel right away is so much better. The improved energy, the improved focus. You're not going to have that kind of, like, cloudy mind, like your head's in the clouds. You're going to feel better, and it's instant. It's like a dopamine hit right away. And then, you continue that over a long period of time, and it's night and day. It's absolutely night and day. So those would be, like, just a couple words of advice, but it's part of our deen to take care of ourselves. So we have to honor our body as an amana from Allah and return our body to Allah in a way that, He will be pleased.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love that. Thank you so much. That really, like, again, like, your ability to just, like, sum things up with the most positive spin. I think the biggest thing that I took from that is a lot of the time my clients especially would struggle with the idea of, this is the workout and I didn't have time. I only got to, like, I could only do 20 minutes, but the workout you gave me was an hour. So I didn't do any. And so what you're saying is, anything is, just doing something, go for that 10-minute walk, get up, go for a little jog around the block is better than choosing to sit on the couch and eat Cheetos. So that is something that we undervalue, that some movement is better than, choosing zero movement, because it just makes it so much harder. And I think one of your videos recently spoke about, like, the whispers of the shaitan, and that, that's like, shaitan wants you to sit on the couch and be sloth-like and not keep promises that you make to yourself. And those things creep in small. So today it's breaking a promise with yourself. Maybe not the biggest haram. Tomorrow, maybe you start breaking promises with others. Then you're breaking promises that you made to Allah. And it grows and it grows like that. I think doing the things that you said you're going to do, even when you don't feel like doing them anymore, is such a big part of our deen. But doing them, starting small, not all of us can read the Quran from beginning to end every month, but we can sit down and read for 5 minutes a day. But often it's like, I don't have an hour, so let me not open the Quran. So I love that you make that analogy of doing small things consistently is going to create such a big result, rather than choosing to just, do
No,
nothing.
absolutely. Like, 20 minutes is even a lot. Like, 5 minutes is better than nothing. Like, something is always better than nothing.
Kiandra, thank you so much. I think it's coming to the end of our chat together, but I'm so glad that we got to do this, admittedly, again, because the first time didn't work out. So inshallah, this one is going to be better. If anybody is wanting to work with you, can I drop your Instagram handle? Is that the best place to get hold of you?
It's at Kiandra Browne, my first and last name, on Instagram. And thank you so much for having me. This was amazing. I'm honestly so happy that we did this. And inshallah, we need to do something like this again, but reverse. I need to be interviewing you.
Inshallah.